Welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into part one of a look at a truly out-of-the-box thinker. We're going to break down Jacques Fresco's radical critique of our current global monetary system, and we'll introduce the foundational concepts of his proposed alternative, something he called a resource-based economy. Get ready, because this is absolutely going to challenge some of the most deeply held assumptions we have about how the world actually works. So, let's kick things off with a fascinating thought experiment posed by Fresco to completely shift our perspective. He asked a really simple but honestly profound question. If all the money in the world were destroyed tomorrow, but our physical necessities, the topsoil, the factories, the technology, and the people were left entirely intact, could we still build things? Could we still fulfill human needs? Fresco argued that the answer is a resounding yes. To get to the bottom of this, we've got 5 main areas to cover today. Getting to know Jacques Fresco, his critique of money, rethinking wealth, the resource-based economy, and finally, how our environment drives our behavior. Let's get right into it. Starting with section 1, meet Jacques Fresco. This guy had a highly distinct, incredibly provocative voice. He definitely didn't mince words, famously stating that our society will go down in history as the lowest development in man. Yeah, he really believed that our current civilization is going to be viewed as totally backward by future generations, mostly because of our obsession with materialism and debt over actual human well-being. And he wasn't just sitting around theorizing. He was an actual industrial designer who consulted for aerospace companies and developed anti-icing systems. He basically spent his whole life applying scientific principles to social structures. He came up with a concept he initially called socio-cyberneering, which later evolved into the Venus Project. His ultimate goal was the application of the most sophisticated forms of science and technology to humanize society, rather than just, generating profit. Moving on to section 2, the problem with money. This is really the core focus of today's explainer. According to the source documents, Fresco argues that money actually creates artificial limitations. His whole thesis is that we already have the tangible resources to solve major social and ecological problems, but we don't. Why? Because there's simply not enough money to pay for it. In his view, money isn't a tool for progress. It's a massive barrier. He points out that science and technology are constantly diverted away from human well-being just for self-interest and financial gain. Think about it. We see industries dumping waste into rivers because it's cheaper in the short term, or failing to install anti-pollution tech that has literally existed for over 75 years just to protect profit margins. He even points out the staggering irony of governments paying farmers not to produce food at full capacity to control market prices while people all over the world go hungry. It's wild when you frame it like that. And what's really fascinating here is his historical perspective. Fresco posits that the monetary system originally evolved as a device to control populations in an environment where resources were actually limited. But today, he argues, it regulates the economy not for everyday people, but primarily for those who already control the wealth. He makes this really sharp distinction between artificial scarcity, stuff like money, debt, and profit margins, and actual physical necessities like topsoil, factories, clean water, and tech. Fresco argues that modern deprivation is mostly artificial. It's driven by the rules of the economy, not an actual lack of the Earth's physical resources. Which perfectly tees up section 3, rethinking wealth and scarcity. To really get Fresco's vision, we have to completely redefine wealth. He uses this killer analogy to make it click. Imagine you're stranded on a deserted island. All the gold, diamonds, and cash in your pocket are completely useless to you if that island doesn't have arable land, clean water, or basic natural resources. On that island, money is totally irrelevant. Only resources matter. Well, Fresco argues this exact same logic applies to planet Earth as a whole. And he points to history to back this up. During the Great Depression, you had vacuum cleaners and cars sitting unsold in lots, not because they didn't exist, but because people lacked the purchasing power to buy them. But then, boom, World War II starts, and the US needs vast amounts of equipment. Did they suddenly stumble upon a mountain of gold to pay for it? No. They just mobilized the physical resources and personnel they already had to rapidly build 90,000 planes. The resources were always there. The financial rules were just bypassed in an emergency. So the real takeaway here is that wealth actually has nothing to do with purchasing power. True wealth is the developed and potential natural resources of a nation and the people applying intelligent science to eliminate scarcity and create a better lifestyle for everyone. Okay, Section 4, a resource-based economy. This is his big proposed solution, a complete paradigm shift. A resource-based economy is essentially a system designed to use technology to overcome scarcity and just eliminate the need for barter, credit, or money altogether. It's a system where goods and services are distributed equitably, using the Earth's existing resources directly to benefit the total population, totally bypassing the financial system. The sources outline a few core pillars here. The absolute biggest one, the unifying imperative, is that all natural and man-made resources must be declared the common heritage of all the world's people. This requires erasing artificial national boundaries, directly applying science to human life, and using cybernetic computerized tech to intelligently manage global production. Picture a world where advanced robotics and AI just handle all the mundane and hazardous tasks. Fresco argued that it's actually degrading to chain a human being to purely repetitive work. By letting machines handle production and inventory, humanity is finally freed up to pursue education, art, and personal development. The whole concept of earning a living just vanishes. He laid out specific steps to make this happen. First, society has to actually acknowledge the failure of the debt system. Then, we launch an all-out effort to develop clean, renewable energy, geothermal, wind, solar. Next, we completely redesign cities from the ground up for maximum efficiency instead of just patching up obsolete infrastructure. And finally, automate manufacturing on a global scale to ensure abundance for everyone. Finally, Section 5, behavior driven by environment. How does all this economic redesign impact human sociology? It brings up a huge question. Is crime just hardwired into us? Are human beings inherently greedy and violent? Fresco completely rejected the idea of a fixed human nature. He said we basically just react to our environment. He uses this great analogy of a bird. A bird can't fly without air, right? If you remove the air, it stops trying to fly. You can't just study the bird in a vacuum. You have to study the environment it lives in. Same goes for us. You can't understand human behavior without looking at the culture and the monetary system shaping it. Change the environment, you change the behavior. Think of it like this. If you're in an area with a low population and an absolute abundance of food and clean water, why steal? The behavior we label as criminal would largely just disappear if you provide abundance. Because crime, corruption, and greed, he argues they are fundamentally just byproducts of scarcity and the monetary struggle for survival. I want to leave you with this thought from Fresco. We are not separate from nature. Our values, beliefs, and behavior are as much a part of natural law as any other process. So if our behavior is so deeply shaped by our environment, what kind of human beings could we become if we completely redesigned that environment for abundance rather than scarcity? It's a pretty wild thing to think about, and definitely something we'll keep exploring. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into Jacques Fresco's incredibly bold blueprint for fundamentally upgrading human values. And how do we do that? Well, by completely changing the world we live in. We're going to focus specifically on a really fascinating aspect of his work here, his views on human behavior, how our environment literally programs our values, and his radical redesign of the whole educational system. So let's get into it.
All right, let's start by challenging a baseline assumption pretty much all of us have about free will. Are we actually in control of our actions? Or is this whole concept of human nature just, a comforting illusion? Fresco argued that what we call human nature doesn't exist in a vacuum. Not at all. Instead, he proposed that our behavior is strictly a reaction to our environment. Basically, if you want to change the human, you've got to change the world they inhabit.
Fresco had this brilliant analogy for this concept. Think about a bird. Obviously, a bird has wings, right? But it can't fly if there's no air. I mean, if you strap a tiny oxygen mask to a bird and put it in a vacuum, it can flap its little wings all day long, but it is going absolutely nowhere. To understand how the bird flies, you absolutely have to study its environment. And the human brain? It's the exact same way. It's really just a responding mechanism reacting to the air around it. So how do we actually study human behavior without completely getting it wrong? Well, Fresco pointed out a massive flaw in traditional behavioral science. He argued that a neurologist mapping electrical signals in the brain is kind of like an Amazonian headhunter staring at the gears of a pocket watch. Sure, they can see the mechanics spinning around and they know exactly where the electrical spikes happen, but that tells them absolutely nothing about how to actually tell time. Or, in our case, it tells us nothing about how the mind forms its concepts of right and wrong.
It really boils down to this. The brain is a battery, and the mind is the charge. A brain is essentially just an empty vessel. It's a piece of high-quality tissue with immense potential, sure, but zero inherent programming. Think about what that means. It means no baby is born inherently bad or greedy. No way. It just waits until the environment, the culture, the upbringing, the physical surroundings, provides the charge that dictates its reactions and fills up that battery.
And that brings us to the trap we are all currently living in. It's called associative memory. This is basically the accumulation of all our environmental reactions and cultural conditioning, and it shapes literally everything we do. It means behavior is completely subject to natural laws. Just like a sailboat is mindlessly pushed by the wind, we are pushed by our culture. If you're born in one culture, you adopt its associative memories. If you're born in another, you adopt theirs. Actually, scratch that. It's more like you are the sum total of your environmental programming.
Now, in his writings on a cybernated society, Fresco details how an environment of absolute abundance shapes positive behaviors. And humans are incredibly malleable. If people have absolute, free access to food, shelter, and education without a price tag, the conditions that trigger socially destructive behavior just vanish. It's a real game changer. You eliminate prejudice, bigotry, and hostility simply by removing the scarcity that causes them in the first place. The environment literally stops programming aggression.
Let's compare our current reality with Fresco's vision for a second. Our current monetary society is totally driven by artificial scarcity. It breeds aggressive, competitive behavior because you quite literally have to fight to survive and secure resources. But over in a resource-based society where abundance is the baseline, the behavioral output completely shifts. When resources are managed intelligently and distributed freely, it naturally fosters cooperation, flexibility, and a huge focus on human development.
So this leaves us with an ultimate, incredibly pressing question. If the environment programs the human, how do we program a better environment? Because if we accept that our values are strictly environmental, well then we have to actively re-engineer both our physical world and our educational systems to create better humans. We literally have to build a framework that programs cooperation instead of conflict.
And this redesign fundamentally starts in the classroom. 20th century education relies heavily on rote memorization and super narrow specialization. It's essentially training people to be obedient cogs in a monetary machine. But Fresco's global education model, it replaces all of that with cooperative, analytical learning. The focus shifts entirely to the symbiotic relationship between people, advanced technology, and the Earth. It's all about creating generalists who truly understand how the whole system works together.
The goals of this new educational paradigm are radically different. I mean, instead of memorizing irrelevant historical dates, children would learn to treat Earth's resources as a common heritage. They would learn how to transcend artificial borders, restore the environment, and actually redesign global cities. The whole goal is to build a generalist toolkit to manage the planet, rather than forcing kids to focus on narrow, politically driven national interests.
But how does this actually happen day to day? Well, by getting kids out of the classroom. You completely remove rote memorization. You implement open, interactive dialogue. And most importantly, you engage students in real-world resource management. Just imagine teenagers taking on rotating leadership roles to manage local farms or clean energy production facilities. This hands-on approach guarantees they deeply, truly understand how their physical world operates and how to maintain it. This leads to a profound paradigm shift. We're talking about managing resources, not people. Fresco firmly believed that if you give citizens the right analytical tools and place them in an environment of absolute abundance, human behavior just stabilizes on its own. And because of that, the need for restrictive laws, politicians, and massive police forces simply vanishes. You don't need to govern people if you intelligently govern the resources that support them. Makes sense, right? Fresco's ultimate physical solution to this whole puzzle is industrial design applied directly to human life. Take his concept of a meticulously designed circular city, for example. It's completely immersed in nature and engineered from the ground up to foster absolute abundance. The architecture itself, we're talking the seamless transportation, the clean energy, the automated resource distribution. That is the literal environment that programs our new cooperative values and ecological balance. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. So what does this all mean for us right now? Are you ready to clear that 20th century dust from your eyes? Now that you've seen how our values, our prejudices, and our behaviors are largely just environmental programming and associative memory, we want to leave you with this. Are you willing to upgrade your tools? Are you ready to discard those outdated societal operating systems and help design a fundamentally sane, cooperative future?
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the absolute mind-bending blueprints left behind by futurist and social engineer Jacques Fresco. We're going to focus specifically on his incredible designs for future cybernated cities and the exact roles that artificial intelligence, complete automation, and these massive mega machines play in what he called a resource-based economy. If you've ever wondered what human civilization would look like if it were built from the ground up for maximum technological efficiency and human well-being, totally free from the constraints of our current economic systems, well, you are in exactly the right place.
So let's just play a little thought experiment for a second. Imagine a society where the physical production of literally everything you need is handled 100% by machines. What if the very concepts of work and earning a living became completely irrelevant? Think about that. Imagine waking up with nowhere you have to be. And not because you're unemployed, but because the whole concept of employment has basically been rendered obsolete by technology. Fresco's blueprint suggests this total paradigm shift. By applying automation intelligently, we're talking about humanity transitioning from merely surviving and paying bills to actually thriving. The daily grind? Permanently retired.
To figure out how we actually pull that off, we kind of have to contrast our current monetary system with Fresco's resource-based economy. Right now, our economy often relies on artificial scarcity just to function. We see this all the time. Well, maybe not see it directly, but we know it happens. When surplus crops are intentionally destroyed just to keep market prices high, or when products are deliberately designed to break down. Our system relies heavily on human labor, often totally neglecting the human consequences of automation. But in a resource-based economy, it's the exact opposite. Technology is used to overcome scarcity, creating total abundance. Manufacturing is fully automated, and technology is finally made entirely subordinate to human and environmental concerns, rather than profit margins.
The philosophy driving this entire physical design is absolutely nailed by the father of cybernetics himself, Dr. Norbert Wiener. He pointed out the utter tragedy of wasting human potential on monotonous, repetitive labor. Just think about the billions of human hours being spent globally right this second, scanning barcodes, turning screws, or moving boxes. When machines are entirely capable of doing the dirty, dangerous, and repetitive jobs, chaining a human being to a factory line is a massive, massive waste of our cognitive potential. Fresco's entire infrastructure is designed to free up that exact potential.
And this brings us to Fresco's physical solution, self-monitoring mega machines handling all that repetitive labor. Picture these massive multifunction lift cranes that literally do the heavy lifting, slotting prefabricated homes directly into giant support structures. In this model, these aren't vehicles being driven by human operators pulling levers. Not at all. They use advanced coordinate tracking and modular blueprints to navigate and execute tasks entirely autonomously. Our participation as humans shifts completely to selecting the desired ends, basically deciding what we want to build and where. The mega machines figure out the complex physics and handle the actual physical execution.
But it doesn't stop at single machines. These scale up into massive, fully automated construction systems. We are talking about robotic equipment receiving instructions straight from satellites to install floors, windows, and roofing, totally untouched by human hands. These machines have self-monitoring sensors that calculate load balances on the fly to prevent industrial accidents before they even have a chance to happen. They're even designed with self-repair mechanisms and the ability to update their own circuitry. By stripping out human error and physical limitations, these self-erecting structures become an unbelievably fast and efficient way to deploy global infrastructure.
The end result of all this coordination is the cybernated city itself. Fresco usually designed these in concentric circles. And actually, that's not just to look futuristic, it's based on pure mathematical efficiency. A circular layout drastically minimizes the travel distance between any 2 points, it optimizes how pipes and wiring are routed, and it naturally integrates with the surrounding ecology. The very center of the city acts as this massive university covering all subjects related to human advancement. Because there's no money, you strip away commercial and business courses entirely, and the educational focus shifts purely to science, art, and expanding human potential.
At the absolute core of this whole setup functions the brain of the city. It's a deeply interconnected, cybernated complex that projects a real-time, 3D virtual Earth to manage global resources. And this isn't just some static database. It essentially acts as an autonomic nervous system for the entire planet. It's constantly processing satellite data on ocean currents, real-time resource inventories, even agricultural yields and animal migration patterns. By responding dynamically to all this real-time earthly data, the system ensures that society stays perfectly balanced with the Earth's carrying capacity. No overproducing, no underproducing, just perfect equilibrium.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. It's completely natural to feel a little bit anxious about an AI running a whole city, right? Like, who programs these systems, and what exactly do they control? Well, in Fresco's model, the AI operates via strict environmental feedback just to balance loads and maintain physical safety. It oversees the physical environment, coordinates distribution, and maintains the ecological balance. But here is the most important part. The AI is explicitly prevented from monitoring or controlling human beings. It is simply a transfer of complex, logistical decision-making over to machines. It's really no different from how we already trust automated pacemakers or emergency backup generators in hospitals today without even giving it a second thought.
Fresco actually makes this vital anti-dystopian distinction crystal clear. Machines manage the physical entities of the environment. They do not manage the people living in it. Unlike today's algorithms that track your every digital click and physical movement just to sell you, say, a new pair of shoes, this technology has zero interest in your personal life. Social monitoring by machines serves absolutely no useful purpose in a system where resources are already abundant and free. The technology's one and only job is to protect the global environment and ensure the delivery of goods. You are left entirely free.
So, with the mundane logistics of city management totally automated, your individual living space can become incredibly personalized. Because automated construction is mathematically so flexible, unique modular homes can be seamlessly dropped anywhere, from mountaintops to remote islands. And these homes are designed to, essentially, take care of themselves. They have outer shells constructed from photovoltaic materials that act as their own solar generators, and they come equipped with computer-controlled automatic cleaning systems. The architecture literally adapts to the environment, allowing you to just enjoy your surroundings without the endless burden of home maintenance. Fresco's designs push even further, though, addressing land shortages with thousands of self-sufficient cities right in the middle of the sea. These massive marine habitats function as offshore hubs for water desalination, pharmaceuticals, and deep ocean mining. They're engineered to harvest completely sustainable resources like tidal and wave power to fuel themselves. Some of these sea cities would be permanently anchored to the seabed, sure, but others are actually designed to detach, travel, and relocate across the globe based on environmental needs or changing weather patterns. They're basically mobile hubs of human habitation. How cool is that?
To connect all these marine habitats and land cities, there'd be a computer-guided transport system using these really smart modular freighters. To put the impact of this into perspective, right now nearly a third of all commercial freight trucks on the road are driving completely empty on the return trips. That is a staggering waste of fuel and energy. But by using a balanced load economy, modular freighters are made of detachable sections that are loaded and unloaded strictly based on real-time demand. That means no empty ships, no trains making useless return trips. It achieves a level of global efficiency our current logistics systems just literally cannot match.
Ultimately, the whole purpose of this organized, automated technology is to fundamentally elevate the standard of living for everyone. By stepping out of the way and letting AI and mega machines handle the monotonous, physical, work-a-day world, we transition human effort entirely away from mandatory labor. Instead, we move toward problem-solving, creative effort, and real individuality. It opens up a whole new phase of social evolution where advanced technology is finally used for the direct gain of every single human being on the planet, rather than just a select few.
Which leaves us with a really profound question to ponder as we wrap up. Once the daily grind is permanently handed off to the mega machines, what incredible things will you do with your time? What kind of dreams, scientific breakthroughs, and personal goals will we be able to achieve as a species when we finally have the total, unrestricted freedom to pursue them? It's a massively inspiring thought, and it's exactly what makes Jacques Fresco's vision for a cybernated future so incredibly compelling. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. I really hope it sparks some fascinating ideas for you.
Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive on the explainer. Today, we're jumping right into part 4 of our series, and wow, we are exploring a truly visionary blueprint for humanity's future. This was conceived by the late industrial designer and social engineer Jacques Fresco. Now, throughout his life, Fresco designed literally everything, from prefabricated houses to aircraft wings, but perhaps his absolute most breathtaking concept was his solution to some of our biggest global challenges, living in the ocean. Yep, we're going to explore his meticulously planned designs for a fully sustainable oceanic future. It's a question that honestly sounds like straight-up science fiction, but it's actually deeply rooted in our practical reality. Are the oceans humanity's final frontier? We always look up to the stars when we think of human expansion, right? But we live on a blue planet. The colonization of the oceans is one of the very last frontiers remaining right here on Earth. Fresco didn't view Earth's waters as an obstacle. Instead, he saw a bountiful, completely untapped wellspring of resources that could fundamentally change how we live, how we generate power, and how we feed our global population. But, why move offshore in the first place? Well, the core problem is immense land-based population pressure. Just think about the sheer claustrophobia and the massive resource strain in highly congested areas like Tokyo, Los Angeles, Hong Kong, or New York. Moving offshore isn't just a fun idea, it's a practical necessity to relieve this pressure. Fresco's vision emphasizes that developing ocean communities is absolutely crucial to respecting Earth's total carrying capacity. It's all about creating this dynamic balance between human habitation and the natural environment. Section 1. Cities in the Sea.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We are looking at the grand architectural vision of Fresco's modular, automated floating cities. And let's be clear, these aren't just boats. They are massive, permanent habitats. The star-shaped layout you see represents a completely self-sufficient ecosystem. According to Fresco's designs, populations in these offshore structures could range from a few hundred to many thousands of people. And what makes them truly a game changer is that they'd be controlled, managed, and operated primarily by automated systems. This ensures maximum efficiency for all the vital life support systems, basically freeing up the inhabitants to focus on research, education, and just enjoying life. And this brilliantly illustrates that beyond just habitation, these aren't simply luxury resorts out in the water. They are designed to be fully functional oceanographic universities and research centers. Students and scientists from all over the world could live here to study marine sciences. These sweeping megastructures would double as monitoring stations. They track ocean currents, weather patterns, marine ecology, pollution, even geologic phenomena. It's about shifting our roles so we act as stewards of the ocean rather than just extractors.
Section 2. Powering the Oceanic Cities. Now, of course, building a massive city in the ocean begs a pretty important question. How do we power these incredible megastructures without destroying the pristine environment they're sitting in? Well, one of the most mind-blowing answers involves massive underwater turbines designed to harness the immense power of ocean currents, like the Gulf Stream. To put the scale of this into perspective, the Gulf Stream carries about 30 million cubic meters of water per second past Miami, Florida. That is literally more than 5 times the combined flow of all the freshwater rivers in the entire world. It's just an unbelievable amount of energy. So the crucial point here is that this multifaceted clean energy approach generates truly massive amounts of power. By capturing the energy from ocean currents combined with wind turbines, solar generators on the upper decks, and even converting the temperature differences of deep ocean cold water into electricity, we achieve something pretty remarkable. It's estimated that the Gulf Stream turbines alone could generate close to 1,000 million watts on a 24-hour basis. That's the equivalent of 2 large nuclear plants. And it provides electricity far in excess of the city's needs, with absolutely zero environmental contamination or radiation danger. Plus, the turbines are specifically designed with centrifuge separators and deflectors, so they prevent any harm to marine life. Section 3. Advanced Sea Farming. Once we've got housing and energy figured out, how do we tackle the next vital human need? How do we feed these offshore populations harmoniously? The answer is mariculture. Now, this goes way beyond traditional and, honestly, often destructive commercial fishing. Mariculture is the planned cultivation of marine crops and fish farming. But the absolute key phrase here is symbiotic relationship. Fresco's blueprint introduces the most advanced principles of polyculture, emulating natural conditions as closely as possible to maintain the reproduction and natural balance of species. It takes every precaution not to disrupt the natural spawning grounds that have sustained humanity for centuries. Let's walk through the specific mechanics of how this actually works. It is a beautifully automated system. Aquatic plants are cultivated in multiple layers suspended by cables in underwater fields right next to the cities. And automation handles all the heavy lifting here. Machines harvest only the tops of the plants, leaving the roots in the lower third to grow a completely new crop without ever needing to be replanted. Meanwhile, solar-operated desalination plants extract fresh water for hydroponics, and natural ocean upwelling is harnessed to pull deep-sea nutrients right up into the aquaculture farms. Now, what's really fascinating about this design is the physical layout of the mariculture system itself. That wide-open circular lattice structure you're looking at, that's highly intentional. It's built specifically to permit the free flow of water throughout the entire farming complex. It's completely non-contaminating, acting as an integral living part of the marine environment rather than some walled-off artificial barrier. Section 4. Offshore Living and Transport. Okay, so we've covered the infrastructure, the power, and the food. But what about the human element? Let's shift our focus to the logistics, the transportation, and the actual day-to-day lifestyle of living in these maritime communities. To withstand the incredibly harsh and corrosive ocean environment, these diverse offshore apartment buildings aren't built from your standard materials. They'd be constructed from highly durable concrete, steel, glass, titanium, and brand new synthetic materials. This allows them to provide a luxurious, stunningly beautiful, and sustainable alternative to the overcrowded concrete jungles of our land-based cities today. And hey, you wouldn't be totally isolated out there either. Transport is handled with maximum efficiency using modular freighters. Instead of one massive ship that has to be unloaded all at once, this kind of freighter consists of detachable sections. When they're connected, they're propelled as a single unit. But upon arriving at a destination, only the specific modules needed for that port are disconnected and towed to the docks. That lets the rest of the ship seamlessly continue on its journey. Talk about efficiency. Let's move on and see how this all builds into the ultimate oceanic lifestyle. For those who want a truly unique private island living experience, there are unsinkable floating sea domes. And get this, they can even be towed ashore and locked onto elevated supports during bad weather. And for the true marvel, just imagine taking an elevator down to an underwater observatory. Sitting in a computerized chair, you can observe protected reefs in total comfort and literally communicate with dolphins and other marine life. It's like something out of a dream. So, bringing all of this information together, the core takeaway is pretty clear. Jacques Fresco's vision isn't just an architectural flex or some fun exercise in sci-fi aesthetics. It's a meticulously planned blueprint for humanity's harmonious survival. By moving to the oceans, we relieve the devastating pressure on our land masses. We tap into infinitely renewable, clean energy, and we can feed the world without depleting the natural ecosystems we so heavily rely upon. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. We have the engineering concepts, we understand the physics of the currents, and we certainly know the limits of our current land-based cities. So, will we recognize the ocean's untapped riches and adapt our habitats to ensure a sustainable future for humanity? Ultimately, it's a question of our willingness to change how we view our relationship with the planet. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and I'll see you next time as we decode the ideas that shape our world.